Before we get into today's mailbag, do you want us to do the fan-led NFL mock draft again this year? Always a fan favorite, so to speak. If you want that, type me in the comments section of today's show. From Stephen Goltz, will there be any players going to the UFL? Some could use the game experience. It's a good question. I think there is a stigma still of you go to the UFL if you're not good enough to make it in the NFL. I think that will deter some players. In particular, if I were Trey Lance, I would go to the UFL. He needs reps more than maybe any of the notable free agents for this Dallas Cowboys team. He could potentially dominate at that level and then try to get a decent money, get some investment, get some interest going in yourself after the draft. That's what I would do if I were Lance, because I don't know how good his market is going to be. From MJ Jefferson, a.k.a. Jesus Game, what if we trade our first this year and a second next year in Mozzie for Myles Garret? I don't think you're that far off on the value. I do think the Browns would start and end combos with two ones. I don't know if a second next year kind of is like a third-round pick this year from a value perspective, given probably where the Cowboys should be drafting next year too. I don't think Mozzie's got immense trade value. That's probably like day 3-ish pick at best value. So it's creative to put Mozzie in there. I also then have a gaping hole at defensive line. I've got no players under contract that are passable. That's kind of a huge concern for me. If you didn't have Micah Parsons, I think I'd be very interested in this. But because you have Micah, maybe you invest your assets elsewhere. But it'd be fun. Make no mistake about that. And these have come in via Super Thanks, a feature here on YouTube. Can donate outside of live videos. Edit your message. Send it in. We will give you a shout-out here on the Cowboys Report because we appreciate your support. Didn't mean to rhyme. That was on me. The Prodigal Heel. Cowboys trade back, scoop an extra second to land Gray Zabel at center. That is a North Dakota State offensive lineman. Shore up the center of the offensive line. Add Henderson in round 2, the Ohio State back. Pick up Arians out of Georgia in rounds 2 to 4, so Burden's kind of a reach. This is in reference to some draft conversation we had. With Zack Martin leaving, we may do better looking at Belton out of NC State. So Belton is a right tackle, and I don't want to put him or Terrence Steele or Guyton at guard, but depth-wise, developmental-wise, day 3, sure. No complaints about that one at all. Gray Zabel is interesting. I don't know if I want to take 2 offensive linemen. I want to take 1 each draft at minimum, but I've got depth kind of right now with Richards and, in theory, Bass and Hoffman and all those guys. We'll see about Nathan Thomas. Trade down, I'm always on board with there. That kind of locks up your interior of the offensive line in theory for a long time. Whether Zabel plays guard or center, you put BB at the other spot in the end. Love Henderson in round 2. That's an explosive back. I'm really intrigued by. The only main issue there really is I'm not very high on Arian Smith. He's fast, and I love speed because I don't have enough speed at wide receiver. But I need speed that can catch, and I don't think he can catch very well. I get way too many Anthony Schwartz vibes. We're filming this, by the way, before the NFL Combine, all the testing and stuff. So I would not be surprised if he is the fastest Combine time this season. He's fast. He's not good at he's still an athlete playing football, though. Now, what NFL draft prospects, in general, could be round 1, could be later, do you want the Cowboys to add? Drop those names from the pinned comments of today's show. Ryan Huffman, if we don't re-sign Osa and don't target a DT in free agency, then the DT has to be the main part of the draft. Maybe trade up for Mason Graham. I love Graham. I would be shocked if he fell to you. I don't know if I want to give up assets when I'm already down a 4th-round pick, but the process makes sense to me. If you don't re-sign Osa and you don't get a defensive tackle in free agency, you are locking yourself into one of your first 2 picks has to be a DT. And you're probably going to draft 2 or 3 defensive linemen. Because I honestly, I think it would be organizational malpractice to enter the draft picking at 12 with Mozzie Smith and nobody else on your D-line. I just think that's such bad roster management. You're going to force yourself to reach for someone that maybe you don't have a top 10 grade on or a top 15 grade on. Now you're kind of forcing it. And when the Cowboys force picks, especially early, that is where they get into trouble. From Michael, the closer the draft gets, the less I want Ashton Jeanty. Need more than him, especially since the Cowboys won't do a lot. I get this. I do. In general, if the Cowboys were to spend more money in free agency and address those needs and not have big question marks at defensive tackle multiple spots, edge depth, and linebacker, and corner, and offensive line, and running back, and receiver, at that point, you get a lot more people on board with taking the best player available and just drafting Jeanty at 12. But if you don't do that, you got positional value questions that kind of become a real problem there. Roger Reynolds, should the Cowboys trade Trevon Diggs? So I think in general, there's been reporting in the past over upsetness from the Cowboys side about Diggs locking in his rehab stuff, and maybe there's some just turmoil between those two sides in the end. I don't think anyone's trading for him. He's due $9 million in base salary. That is fully guaranteed this year because it's guaranteed for injury. He's injured. Fully guarantees in March. He's not going to pass physical by then coming off the knee surgery. It's guaranteed. So cutting him doesn't save any money even after June 1st. I don't foresee that one happening. I don't think anyone wants an injured corner due, it's only about $10 million with bonuses too that are per game stuff. I don't think anyone wants to trade for that. So I think this year he's not going anywhere. Next year, when you maybe want to pay DaRon Bland, if you don't pay him this season, which the money really wouldn't impact you this year anyway, once the money kind of hits the books, maybe that's more up for grabs then. So will Trevon Diggs be a Cowboy in 2026? Because I think he's here this year. I'd be pretty shocked otherwise. Why for yes and for no? Let me know in the comments section of today's show. Stephen GX, if the board falls where Ashton and Ted are still available, which would you take? I would probably take Ted McMillan because of the positional value. Those grades are close enough to me, even though not factoring in positional value, Jeanty would be higher outside of kickers and punters because that's just silly of me to do otherwise. Jeanty would be higher, but I think that a combination of, let's say it's Ted McMillan and a Marion Hampton or Henderson or Caleb Johnson or whatever, I think it's a better combination than Jeanty and Jack Besh or waiting till round 3 to get a receiver and taking a DT in round 2. I think you'll probably wait till round 3 and maybe Besh is there for you or Higgins or Trey Harris or whatever. I just think that's probably better combination in the end. We will have more Cowboys news and rumors for you all off season long. Hit that sub button, youtube.com/@CowboysTV. Perk 30. If Jeanty doesn't fall to 12, how do you feel about Dallas trading down to 2024 and taking a Marion Hampton? It's probably the range where he starts to make some sense for you. I love team trade down. I think I would have a pretty long list of guys I would consider at that spot. Multiple different defensive linemen, multiple receivers, probably some offensive linemen. A linebacker like Jihad Campbell could make some sense in that range too even. Maybe I'm a big fan of Barron at Texas. We'll see if the NFL is high on him and me or if it's a Brian Branch situation all over again. I don't, maybe a touch early for Hampton, but not by a lot. And I think it just depends on how the board falls. But I think trading down, if you don't love a guy at 12, if you can get someone to come up for them, which is not a guarantee, by the way, because if you don't love anybody, who say other teams love anybody either, then yeah, I've always got interest in a trade down. I think that benefits you in the long run, having more shots at it. Steven again, how would you feel if we got Riley Leonard in the 5th, since we're more likely moving on from Trey Lance? It's fine. In general, and I promise you there will be 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 guys that make me look dumb. I don't like this quarterback class. Ward and Sanders are the top 2. They're not going to be in your conversation. I don't have first-round grades on them. I am lower on Jackson Dart than where he probably goes. I'm lower on almost probably every quarterback than where he ends up going. I've got a 6-ish on Leonard right now. He can run. He's got mobility. He's tough. That can be a good backup quarterback for you. Unless I see just a massive step forward in his just overall passing, especially his deep passing, I just don't see starter stuff there. When he misses it, it's ugly. I mean, go back and watch that NIU game. They're taking 4 shot downfield and it's underthrown by 15 yards. It's a horrible throw, and that kind of is stuck with me. But 5th round, 6th round, late 5th round, sure, that's fine. I've got no issue spending one of your 18 5th round picks on a quarterback. That's fine. That makes sense even. That's less value than what you invested on Trey Lance, and you get him for more years. I don't have many issues there, frankly. Craig, how do you replace Zack Martin? Free agency-wise, I look at someone like a Will Hernandez. The cheaper option coming off an injury, knows Clayton Adams could be a stopgap starter for you. Internally, you can give Brock Hoffman a chance. You can give TJ Bashins. Let those 2 guys compete even. I'm not opposed to letting the internal young guys, the cheap guys, fight for that starting job. I'm fine with that. I don't think that's a problem, frankly, because they got by this year without Zack Martin. So I feel better about not having Zack Martin with the decline in play and the injuries than I would have felt 2 years ago. And as I was very worried about that because you had no answer. Now you have options. And if the right value pick is there in whatever round, you can also draft one. That's why I want to fill all my needs. That way, if you fall in love with Tyler Booker or something, or if he falls to round 2, which seems unlikely, or you love Armand Membu and want to play him at guard, you can take that guy if you fill all your other needs. What is your concern level over losing Zack Martin? Scale it for it from 1 to 10. 1 on the low end, 10 on the high end. Keith the Man, switch Diggs to safety for next season. I don't think so. I like my safeties to be able to tackle, and that's not Diggs' game. I don't want to have a bad tackling safety. I worry more about a bad tackling safety than do about a bad tackling corner. I think back to, this is way, way back when. I remember Leon Hall. Once he lost a step for the Bengals, good tackler. They put him at safety and it worked. I don't think Diggs translates that great to safety. WDS, Tom, round 1, Jeanty. Round 2, Will Howard. I'm out. Sorry. I don't have Will Howard anywhere near a second round grade, and he's not going to play for 2 or 3 years, so I can't do that there. Round 3, backup DT. I like that one. Round 4, which I don't know how we get a 4th round pick, but trade down, whatever, trade up, whatever. Backup QB, cool. Round 5, backup receiver. Round 6, backup running back. Round 7, backup right guard. Again, this is why I don't want to burn a second round pick on a quarterback. All of a sudden, I get a DT, but I don't address receiver. I'm kind of thin at other spots there. Dylan, what are the odds that Jones boys don't do anything? It's at least 50-50, right? It's tough to trust them. It would be really disheartening and frankly concerning if they didn't do anything, because they have so many needs and so much money available to spend. I know it says whatever $2 million right now or $1 million, whatever, on the cap sites. You restructure Dak, you restructure Lamb, you're well beyond $50 million. You're approaching 60, 70, and you can free up more as needed. They have to do something. They have to. I guess they don't have to, but it would be really disappointing if they didn't. And frustrating, and I think would lead to even more apathy than there already is. I want to be excited about offseason moves for once. I haven't been that way in a long time. I want to be excited and convincing myself that the guy they paid maybe too much money was worth it, instead of mad they didn't do anything. I'd have to spin zone it that way. Then spin zone, washed up Zeke Elliott.